Welcome back to Cosmic Comics. Today I begin my discussion of Herbert Wyndham, or as he's better known, the High Evolutionary. His first story arc is in Thor, Volume 1, issues 134 through 135, written by Stan Lee with art by Jack Kirby and published in 1966. But this story begins with a subplot that was rolled out over the course of several months, beginning in Thor, Volume 1, issue number 129, with the first appearance of Tana Nile. Thor arrives at the home of his love interest, Jane Foster, where he is greeted by a female he has never met before. Tana is introduced as Jane's new roommate, and we are told that she has just moved to the city and is looking for a job. Tana lets on that she comes from a distant place, but is oddly elusive about where that place might be. Thor finds Tana to be oddly majestic and compelled to obey her. He even goes as far as to drop down to one knee upon being introduced. Jane remarks that she seems to have that effect on almost everybody. Thor then breaks the big news. He's returning to Asgard to renounce his godhood and become Donald Blake forever in order to marry Jane Foster. Meanwhile, Tana watches from the next room, wanting to ensure that Thor doesn't interfere with her carefully laid plans. Not sure why she couldn't just find another apartment. In the next issue, Tana gets tired of Jane Foster's emotional swooning and calls love an emotion for fools and weaklings. But then Tana lets her carefully crafted identity slip for a moment when she tells Jane that where she's from, love is as outdated as pity or sorrow. That begs the question from Jane, where does Tana come from? And then Tana turns on the charm, or as she calls it, the aura of majesty. To ensure Jane doesn't interfere with her plans, Tana instructs Jane to take a long journey and to never return. Tana's goal is to ensure that Thor never learns her secret. In fact, she says that of all those who live, Thor must never learn her secret. Again, bad choice in roommates. Seriously, just go to any other city. Tana continues the hypnotist act, getting Jane to pack a bag and grab a coat before demanding that Jane put every other thought out of her mind and go as far away as possible to where Thor would never find her. The overall goal is for Jane to serve as a distraction. Hopefully, if Thor is busy looking for Jane, he won't be hanging around the apartment. In the next issue, we catch up with Jane on a bus leaving New York. As she does so, we can see from the thought bubbles that she doesn't want to leave, but feels compelled to do so. An elderly lady sitting next to Jane notices how quiet Jane is being and asks where Jane is going, but Jane doesn't know. She just knows that she needs to get very, very far away. We are then shown that Tana Nile is a Regalian alien who is leading an invasion force, but that's a story for another time. Issue number 132 continues to follow Jane Foster, who is gone from bus to plane. Again, the person sitting next to her notices how quiet she is, this time asking if anything is wrong. Jane explains that she was compelled to take the plane, as though she had no choice, and the gentleman confesses that he too was compelled to take the flight. In issue 133, we find the two traveling companions dining in a mountain village somewhere in Europe. The strange man is introduced as Mr. Porgia, who invited Jane out to dinner. He's searching for his friend Tagar, whom he claims is the only person with true courage, enthusiasm, and dedication. It doesn't seem as though Mr. Porgia is having to search terribly hard for Tagar, as we're told that he will soon be arriving. And in the next panel, Tagar has arrived, and Tagar appears to have jumped the gun on whatever scheme Mr. Porgia was hatching when he asks if Jane is the one. And Portia responds, no, she hasn't consented, before explaining that he was waiting for Tagar to arrive before making his proposal. Everybody stands up from the table and Tagar tells Portia to stand aside. Tagar is looking for a teacher. That's all he needs to be on the threshold of solving the eternal secret of life. A teacher? Any teacher? Jane seems confused and informs them that she's a nurse. This doesn't dissuade Tagar one bit. In fact, he says that being a nurse is all the better, as knowledge of medicine makes her twice as valuable. This is the worst job interview ever. Jane turns down the offer to go and teach, but Tagar doesn't appear ready to accept no as an answer, insisting that the High Evolutionary must have her services. The story kicks off in earnest in Thor issue 134 in the village square of a small European principality. Immediately, we see two men coming to warn Count Tagar to not take the road to Wundagore. As the vehicle approaches, they inform the Count that the surrounding hills are filled with armed bandits who want to capture Count Tagar and in doing so steal his wealth. Count Tagar assures the men that the invincible Knights of Wundagore will protect them before telling Porgia to drive on. In the back seat of the car, Jane Foster wonders what she has gotten herself into. She's probably also wondering, where did the top of the car go in this panel? As they drive on, Tagar knows that if bandits have heard of Wundagore, then their secret must be getting leaked, but Porgia assures the Count that nothing can stop them now. After all, the High Evolutionary has planned things out too well. Meanwhile, those bandits are ready to intercept Count Tagar. As they see his vehicle approaching, they radio ahead for an attack. A roadside bomb of some sort is set off, and Count Tagar calls for the car to be stopped, insisting that it is the bandits who are in danger. Multiple armed men swarm towards the car with the sole intention of grabbing Count Tagar and taking off. Tagar comes out in impressive form, taking on 6 men at once. One of the bandits gives a warning before they lower their weapons and open fire. At that moment, 2 of those bandits are bound by bolas thrown from somewhere above them. Another bandit is pinned to a cliff by a giant metal lance. The remaining bandits begin to flee in fear. We aren't given a good look at what scared them, only told that the attacks came from the sky. The Regalians gave Thor a psych search gauge, which will lead him to Jane Foster's life force aura, which basically serves as a permanent tracking device. No, that's not creepy. As Thor closes in, we see a couple of gents commenting on the fact that even Thor will be forbidden access to Wundagore. As Thor flies along, he spies numerous men limping along from a recent battle. These are the same bandits who attacked Count Tagar. They took such a beating, they no longer have the energy or will to run. Thor grabs one of them and demands to know what is going on. He's told that the Knights of Wundagore attacked from above. Something crazy happened when one of their helmets fell off, but the man refused to talk about it. In fact, all the men walk with their heads cast down. Thor notes it as though their eyes saw something their minds could not comprehend. And seemingly at random, Thor decides that some distant mountains hold the secret. Dude, just keep following the psych search gauge. You already wrote it into the story. As Thor flies along, he spies an opening in a nearby peak which can only be reached by flying. He decides to investigate and, upon flying through the opening, is lassoed by a lariat of tempered steel. We then get to see the Knights of Wundagore, who are all riding flying sea-doos and refer to Thor as a knight without an atomic steed. A second member of the team is working to help secure the Thunder God so that they can take him before the High Evolutionary. Thor decides to not struggle and see where these guys are going to take him. They take him to the peak of the mountain and approach a structure which constantly bursts forth with ominous rays. The knights land upon a platform and an iris-type doorway opens. Upon landing, Thor demands that his bonds be removed, but the knights, they aren't about to take orders from an unarmed prisoner. Thor grabs the steel ropes and tosses his captors behind himself. In the process, we learn the names of several of the knights: Sir Leopard, Sir Ocelot, and Sir Lion. Do we see an animal theme developing here? One among the knights calls for their conflict to end and derides his fellow knights on being defeated by a lone intruder. The one in charge, possibly wanting to save face, offers to free Thor so that he might make a dignified entrance to the land of Wundagore. Thor requests that if the fighting is over, they should probably remove their helmets as he desires to see his foes. The captor begins to remove his helmet, and as he does, he explains that their faces will not be what Thor expects. They are new men. Thor reels back, wanting to know what a new man is. Once more we shift scenes. This time the reader is told that they should have already guessed that the High Evolutionary was creating a miracle in his lab. Why? Why would the reader think that? We have been told very little about the High Evolutionary, and anytime we might be told something useful, the story just cuts off. But here we have him, the first appearance of the High Evolutionary in the pages of Marvel. He is in the process of shifting genes to transform and create another new man. Wow, what a great panel. The High Evolutionary is working with his first wolf, and he tells us that a wolf's inherent savagery is one of the greatest of any creature on Earth. Ooh boy. I would say this opinion is more a personal bias on the part of Stan Lee than anything mired in reality. Or if it is supposed to be a bias on the part of the character of the High Evolutionary, it makes one wonder how much he really knows about animals. Despite the questionable introduction, we do have some cool stuff going on here. The wolf achieves temporal motion, then his genes begin reshifting, and finally, a new man begins to form. In all his years of experiments, never has the High Evolutionary had a failure. In a few short moments, he has achieved what would take nature billions of years to accomplish. But before we can learn anything else, an emergency alarm goes off, and in walks Thor with two guys hanging off of himself. I thought the fighting was over. Why is he suddenly barging in? The lackeys apologize for their inability to stop Thor, and finally we get a good look at the High Evolutionary along with the big reveal of the new men. They are all animal men. The High Evolutionary is perturbed from the interruption and wants to know who the intruder is. The new men quickly explain that he has arrived looking for Jane Foster. I have to say that the High Evolutionary comes across as rather accommodating, telling Thor that she can be found in Wing 2 and that he has no desire to be involved in such petty squabbles. The High Evolutionary claims that he is superior to nature, and to this Thor tells him, never, and then takes off in search of Jane. Once inside, Thor discovers Jane teaching in a classroom full of new men. Jane stands up and gives Thor a hug, explaining that she is teaching them all about the outside world, but Thor, he's ready for her to leave, feeling a growing aura of evil about the place. Jane doesn't see anything wrong with what is going on here, while Thor remains disturbed by what he's seen. Elsewhere in the compound, the High Evolutionary made a slight mistake by leaving the ray on the wolf for too long following Thor's intrusion into his home. The result is going to be a wolf whose evolution is sped along at an unprecedented and unpredictable rate. This wolf creature will surpass the new men, a combination of supreme man and supreme beast combining with incredible power. He just hopes that the beast isn't evil. Minutes later, the procedure is complete. Not sure how they ever got around to turning the laser off. The wolf creature rises. He lives, he feels, and he hates. Looks like he's evil. The creature is capable of using its mind to probe out nearby, and it senses life. And if there was any question, the wolf creature clears it up. Whatever lives must be destroyed. Thor attempts to lead Jane out of the building, but before they can escape, the danger is upon them. Okay, so this story concludes its 6-month run in issue number 135. The opening splash leaves us more or less where we left off, only now the super beast is emerging, transporting itself through the wall. The wolf pounces upon Thor as he emerges from the other side. His evolved brain allows him to mentally assess Thor's most vulnerable pressure points. As the wolf comes in, he explains that his evolution also taught him millions of years worth of combat skills, and thus he knows every form of combat. And as ridiculous as it is, Thor looks down and notices the beast is using a karate chop that Thor has never seen. I would love to know what sets this karate chop apart from others. The super beast comes in with another strike. This one will destroy the Thunder God's time sense, leaving him stunned, a move that won't be discovered for another 50,000 years. Okay, just in case anybody out there doesn't know this, evolution does not teach you combat skills. Before he's finished his first battle, the Super Beast is already ready to move on to the next one, all the while talking himself up and pumping his own ego. I'm so smart, and deadly, and cool, and as I said, this battle isn't done yet. Thor rises, striking the Super Beast. The High Evolutionary arrives with an army of new men knights. He calls for the rest to stand back so he can destroy the abomination he created. One might expect the High Evolutionary to start blasting away with his gun, and he does, kind of. The device is a subsonic discordian, and the High Evolutionary begins blowing into the device, creating a super-powered dog whistle that humans can't hear but will bring instant death to the wolf. Wow. Any chance that might kill off some of your other new men? But the device doesn't seem to work all that well, as it fails to kill the beast, instead giving it a headache. The beast runs away to escape the pain, and Thor tosses his hammer at a fleeing foe. Yeah, that's a sucker punch right there. But as soon as the Super Beast is out of range of the Discordian, he regains full power, capable of repulsing the hammer with a field of basic mental repulsion. The Super Beast begins thinking a little more long term. He makes his exit, planning to return after he comes up with a plan to overtake Wundagore and then the world. As he dives behind a door, Thor calls back his hammer and announces that no door can resist his hammer. But then the High Evolutionary steps in, who warns Thor that the man-beast can cover the entire wall with a protective barrier. Thor seemingly scoffs at this admonition. In order to prove his point, the High Evolutionary tosses a small object towards the door. The explosion looks to be devastating, although somehow missing our heroes. Thor changes his tune, recognizing that the barrier is made out of antimatter, which no positive atoms can penetrate. So Thor was basically all talk when he said, "A barrier? Of what concern can that be to Thor?" The High Evolutionary tells them the worst of it. Behind the barrier is his genetic laboratory, containing his evolutionary ray, which the man-beast could use to create a new race of extremely powerful Newmen. But why would the Beast-Man create Newmen if his goal is to destroy all life? The High Evolutionary puts his head in his hand and bemoans the fact that he alone is to blame for all of this. He was attempting to make something good with the creation of his new men, but this single failure is a threat to all of humanity. Shortly afterwards, outside, several Knights of Wundagore are out on patrol where they see the rays of life bursting forth from the genetic laboratory. They inform the High Evolutionary that his genetic laboratory is in operation. I'm not sure that Thor is thinking straight. Again, he says he will go after the man-beast, no matter the risk. Although he previously admitted that such an attempt would be useless. Jane Foster, who also saw what happened to the item tossed into the barrier, asked Thor to take her with him. It seems as though these two suddenly have a death wish, but alas, the High Evolutionary steps up, telling them that he has a better way. He pulls forth an induction device and clamps it to a wall, claiming that the device will bring the man-beast into the open, allowing Thor to strike with his hammer. Remember the fact that the hammer did nothing to the man-beast during Thor's previous attack. The induction device is supposed to send forth a vibra beam, powerful enough that the man-beast will be forced to leave his barrier and come here to destroy it. But why will the beast want to destroy it? And since it can put up antimatter barriers literally with just a thought, how will this device allow them to get close to the man-beast? Not to mention the fact that I am not a big fan of these kind of answers in comics, where the answer to the problem is always, hey, I got a piece of tech on the floor over there that will solve all our problems. Moving on. As the induction device begins to work, Thor calls for Jane to find a place of safety, but Why would he think that she would take shelter when two panels, just two panels prior, she was asking to face whatever comes together? We don't even get a panel of her leaving, just the High Evolutionary telling us the female is gone. Thor then remarks that the man-beast appears to come from every direction at once, but why would he say that when the man-beast has shown no such powers? And when the man-beast does appear, he doesn't come from every direction at once, but he does arrive with a large crowd of Newmen, or as the High Evolutionary calls them, evil Newmen. These new Newmen are being telepathically controlled by the man-beast. Notably, and as Thor points out, these new Newmen were turned into Newmen and not man-beast, meaning that they are weaker than the wolf. As Thor fights off the various attackers, the man-beast creeps up behind the Asgardian. Elsewhere, Tagar calls the Knights of Wundagore back to the castle to participate in the battle. Porgia is afraid he wasn't bred for battle, and Tagar reassures Porgia that there are enough of them who were. Porgia then argues that Tagar isn't trained for combat, despite us and Porgia having seen that Tagar is a very competent fighter. Tagar explains that thanks to his ancestors, he doesn't need training, and he lets loose an odd statement. It's time for me to revert to type. Tagar pulls forth the same gloves we saw him wearing previously. As he puts them on, he calls them the cathode gloves, which were given to him when he emerged from the genetic ray. And this is the first that we have learned that Tagar has had the genetic ray used on him. Tagar calls to the Knights of the Realm and prepares to lead them into battle against the man-beast and the evil Newmen. And thus we get two groups of Newmen battling it out. I think that this battle is perhaps a little oversold. It's hyped as a cataclysmic confrontation such as no mortal has ever witnessed since the dawn of time. A mighty bold claim that, without meaning to, somehow manages to belittle the real-world sacrifices that people have made. Despite the over-the-top narration, it is a fun panel, even if it's hard to follow any of the action. And that's it. Here we go. Two panels of fighting where the reader can't tell anything that's going on, and that's enough to wrap up the conflict as Thor leaps out of the fray. Even though the reader was led to believe that the man-beast was about to attack Thor, we see it actually went after the High Evolutionary. As Thor and the wolf clash, Thor exclaims that he is the culmination of millions of years of evolution. The problem with that statement is he's not. The Norse gods were created by the god stuff left behind when Demogorgon reverted back to Adam and returned to the sun. When he did so, he let loose his god stuff into the world, and it was the minds of man who formed this god stuff into the marble pantheons. See the link above if you want to know more. At most, Thor has existed somewhere less than 4,000 years. Either way, the man-beast points out that he has beaten Thor once, and he can do it again. Thor attempts to strike the man-beast with his hammer, while the man-beast attempts to use his mind blast to disintegrate the weapon. But Thor, he's had enough. He pulls out his god card. The beast is only mortal, while Thor possesses the powers of all eternity. Thor then lets loose a series of blows. Of note, not once does Thor's hammer strike the beast as he uses his fist to pummel him forth with 4 quick strikes, and the fight is over. Thor checks on the High Evolutionary, ensuring that he is safe. The High Evolutionary looks sad as he tells Thor that he must ensure that the man-beast never again menaces Wundagore or threatens the world. Thor wants to know how the High Evolutionary plans on doing this. The High Evolutionary tells him to observe. He then instructs the man-beast and evil Newmen all to be taken to the Star Chamber. One of the Newmen informs the High Evolutionary that the room is ready and zeroed in on the galaxy Dromasana. Moments later, the Star Chamber is rocketed into space. As they soar into space, the High Evolutionary explains that the creatures in the craft were not to blame for what his machine made them. Instead of punishing them, he is giving them a new lease on life by sending them to an uninhabited galaxy where they can form a society of their own. After the evil Newmen are gone, the High Evolutionary begins to take off his helmet, explaining that he no longer needs it now that he plans on leaving soon. Upon taking it off, Thor is surprised to see a normal human, and now we get the High Evolutionary's origin story. He started his career as a research scientist. His first big breakthrough was a genetic accelerator for which he was scoffed at by his colleagues, and with just cause, I should say. Evolution isn't something that's guided. It happens via random mutations that accumulate over time. The majority of those mutations are either benign or harmful. Basically, the guy made a cancer machine. We get a pretty good idea that this guy cares more about his science than anything else in the next panel. He wants to test his machine, and instead of doing it on mice or something that he doesn't have a personal connection with, he tested on his dog. This monster tested on his dog. Sorry, I own a dog. Have owned several dogs. I'm not testing my cancer machine on my dog. Somehow, the machine ends up being a success, but the man dog is shot by somebody who thought it was a beast. It's then that the High Evolutionary decides he needs to take his subjects somewhere safe to conduct his experiments, or as he puts it, safe from unthinking bumblers. Sure, but don't call them unthinking bumblers when you're the guy letting loose what looks like were creatures on the unsuspecting public. And also, what do you think that guy in the yellow shirt is thinking about all of this? As if this story wasn't crazy enough, the High Evolutionary becomes rich when he discovers a load of uranium. No further explanation. Humble research scientist to rich miner overnight. He then uses his cash to build a castle and create his new men, whom he raises as knights under a code of chivalry and honor. And this is a good time to point out, no lady new men appear to be being made. I don't know, maybe that's just to stop any crossbreeding, but it just seems a little weird. Two of his first experiments were Tagar and Porgia, who travel around the world bringing the High Evolutionary information and supplies. The High Evolutionary wanted to start a school for his new men and ordered Tagar and Porgia to find him an instructor. If that's the case, why didn't they just put out a job offering or such? Why did they have to go and kidnap Jane Foster? Anyway. But today's events have convinced the High Evolutionary that as long as Wundagore exists, humanity is in danger from it. Thor wants to know what choice the High Evolutionary has. The answer? The final choice the High Evolutionary always knew he would have to make someday. He tells his visitors to leave as the giant iris door opens up once more. Jane wants to know what's going on, while Thor, thinking he understands, prepares to depart. As Thor flies away with Jane by his side, the entirety of the side of the mountain begins breaking away, revealing that the castle at Wundagore is in fact a giant spaceship. Jane wants to know where it's going, but Thor doesn't know. The universe is vast and contains unlimited worlds, and one of those worlds might become a home for the High Evolutionary and the Knights of Wundagore. And the issue ends on some comic book mumbo-jumbo. When a new star burns more brightly, Thor and Jane will know why. Stars or other things in space glow more brightly on a regular basis in Marvel Comics. Never once do I recall Thor and or Jane Foster exclaiming that it must be because of the High Evolutionary. Alright, overall, this comic was a fun read. I am not certain that the 6 months it took to lead into this story was worth it, and I would have loved it if we could have gotten some more action during the fight scenes. There are a few minor issues with the science of evolution and with continuity, but mostly the latter is because so much of Marvel canon had yet to be firmly established. Additionally, the names New Man and Beast Man are ones I don't really like, with X-Men, Inhumans, Eternals, Deviants, and so many more. I would have liked to have seen a more inspired name than Newman. Overall, great Kirby art, and it's filled with loads of Stan Lee tropes throughout. we'll catch up with the High Evolutionary again, where he sets up operations on a new world, Wundagore 2. Thanks for watching. Feel free to hit any of the buttons below. I'm out.